Good morning. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Marilyn Orr, President of the club, and we are thrilled to have you join us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV, as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel and Facebook. Our club meets weekly using this digital platform, Zoom. When we meet in person, it's at Laurel Lake Retirement Community for breakfast. We hope to get back to that soon. We meet most Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30 a.m. So come out to join us for a meeting. We would love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact we are having on our local community and the world, please visit our website, rotaryhudson.org. So enjoy this meeting today and help us share the message that Rotary opens doors of opportunity.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Mike Swain.
Ron, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Ron, and good morning, everybody. Thank you. As we gather here this morning in friendship and community to learn and reflect on the insights and experiences and wisdom of others, let us be reminded of how blessed we are. And let us also not forget during these difficult times that we really are all in this together. Borrowing from a Buddhist prayer called the Metta, or the loving kindness meditation prayer, let us engage in the power of prayer that, irrespective of religion, connects us more deeply with our beliefs and our values, and helping us to develop a stronger sense of connection with each other. So let us pray the following in the name of all that is good. May we be filled with loving kindness for ourselves and all those around us. May we be happy and live a healthy life. May we feel connected and calm. I love that one. 3,000 years ago, Buddha's telling us we need to chill out. May we be free from suffering, and may we live in peace. Amen.
Thank you, Mike. And now to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Bill Wooldridge.
Please stand and join me in the allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for the four-way test of things to think, say, and do. Wait to James, here we go. Number one. Is it true? Number two. Is it fair to all concerned? Number three. Will it build goodwill and number four. Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Bill. And now our president, Pat Shearer.
Thank you, Ron. Couple of quick announcements before we start up the meeting this morning. Club board will meet next week immediately following the meeting. Ed Sogan, it's October, so you want to talk Santa on the Green.
It's never too early to start thinking about Santa. As the person in charge, I would like to ask for 2 volunteers to help me as Santa's helpers. in regards to the organization and also running the event. It will be on December 4th. It goes from 9 until 3. So we'll have 2 3-hour shifts, and we'll have our sign-up sheets obviously much later, but looking forward to that. Also, Sharon Lowe Blackford, who was a Rotarian forever and started the Mrs. Santa, will be helping out as a little elf, but we do need a Santa for the second shift. So if someone knows of anyone that is a jolly person that could fill that bill, we need to have somebody step up for the second shift. That would be the 12 to 3 o'clock Santa. The last thing I wanted to mention is that during the Labor Day parade, we had Santa riding in a Corvette driven by Father Joe Boisel. He did an outstanding job. I had mentioned this before. He still has not returned the Corvette. So
thanks to Rich Warfield, next week we will be kicking off our fall fundraiser. So starting next week, we'll have the popcorn and the floral bouquets, or actually floral arrangements this year that we're going to be selling as a club. So we'll be kicking that off next week, and we'll have all the materials here for everybody for that for next week. So there'll be 2 different kinds of popcorn. There'll be white cheddar caramel, and then there will be a holiday arrangement that'll be available as well. Finding roses was almost impossible. If everybody's aware the supply chain is broken. I shouldn't say it's broken, it's been shattered. So we had to punt and go to a different opportunity. So the two kinds of popcorn will each retail for 10, and the center floral arrangements will retail for 30. Somebody hooked them up with popcorn. I don't know who would have access to popcorn. So just a reminder, if you didn't see the big orange signs coming down Barlow Road, so if you're coming in from 91, you will not have a problem. The road will be open all the way to the golf course. If you're coming in from Terex, you're going to need to go all the way around and come in from the other side. So they'll be starting that road construction next week. So be prepared next week that Barlow Road further down past the golf course will be ripped up for about a month. We have 2 new members, prospective new members that are with us. Jerry Zimlicka. Jerry, you're here. Welcome. And then online, we have Tom Petropoulos. So Tom has been online for a number of our meetings. So both of them will be going to the board for formal approval next week. And then it'll be going through the 2-week waiting process, and it should be full members of the club by the end of the month. So we're excited to have both of them here. So for all of our online participants, starting next week, we will be changing our password for the meetings because we've just gone through the candidate series. So that's been pretty public. So we're going to be changing our password for that. And then so that'll be coming out in the newsletters coming out in the next couple of this next week. All right. So I went to Chicago to get our quote for the day. I enjoy getting things done. My philosophy is the edge of something. That's where we have to go in local government. And not only the philosophy, but the creativity and people around you. They have to go to the edge. Richard Daley. See, that got more laughs than my dad jokes. Okay. So with that, we'll turn it over to Dave Basil, and we'll get started with our candidate presentations.
Thank you, President Patrick. That's surprising coming from Richard Daley. Good morning, fellow Rotarians and guests. I am Dave Basil, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here again this morning as we conclude our series of meetings where we meet the candidates for elected office here in Hudson. Today, We are going to hear from the last two candidates for Hudson City Council. There are 3 at-large seats up for election this November. There are a total of 8 candidates. The 3 highest vote totals will be sworn in as new members of council at the first organizational meeting of council in December. That is the first Tuesday in December. As with past meetings, I will briefly introduce each of the candidates. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to make a presentation, prepared remarks, outlining their qualifications and views on the issues. Following their prepared remarks, the candidates will be seated across the stage in the chairs, and they will take questions from the audience here in the room, as well as those attending on Zoom. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question. There will be no back and forth between the candidates. This will strictly be an opportunity to answer questions that citizens of Hudson have and would like to have answered. Out of respect for everyone, we would ask that you hold applause and not applaud individual responses or comments from the candidates. And we would ask that you keep your questions short, direct, and to the point. Please avoid, to the extent possible, long preambles and statements in advance of your question. With that, we will begin to meet the candidates. The first candidate is Greg Yannick. Greg has been a Hudson resident since 1974. He was appointed by Hudson City Council to serve the community on the Hudson Community Television Advisory Committee, served as co-chair of the Ad hoc Deer Committee, and was a member of the original Recycling Committee. Greg also served on the Municipal Planning Commission and was chair of the commission for a year. Please join me in giving a Rotary welcome to Greg Yannick.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everybody. My pleasure to be with you as Rotarians, as a resident of Hudson. I'd like to welcome those at home that are watching us in the coziness of their foggy little morning here. My name is Greg Yannick. It's been my pleasure to be a resident of this community. My family, we live on 30 acres, which is just south of the village, quite a little historic slot of our historic town. As David has indicated, it's been my good fortune to be appointed by council to serve on various boards. I think the one that strikes me the most was the good work that we did as a community on the issue of the white-tailed deer in our town. I think it was and still continues to be an issue that is in our northeastern Ohio area, but the work that we did here in town as a community as a whole sort of demonstrates sort of what I think I bring to the table. As a former Peace Corps volunteer, I've had the good fortune to have, I guess, 2 parents that brought me up in an educational world, exposed on a very early stage to, if you would, a broad spectrum of folks that influenced me growing up. So when I first sat on Planning Commission, I can remember distinctly my first meeting and the importance that I felt and the responsibility to this community as it looks at our zoning and looks at how we do the development that we do in this town. And I think my experience as an early observer, as a growing up, and the fortunes that my parents exposed me to, was that ability to recognize how important every voice is. And I think that our community has teetered with the importance of all the voices that have been represented in our community, at least through my experiences on the boards that have had the good fortune to serve. When I think about when we narrowed things down as phase 1 for our downtown development came around, there were quite some polarized voices in our town at that time. Those who didn't want to see this change and those who wanted to see this change. I think as a community, we've struck a good balance with the change that we saw in downtown as phase 1 is closing its fruition, if you would. And we look at what possibilities we have as a community in phase 2. I've taken the moment to try to get to as many doors over the last couple of months as I started this thing to talk down on the green and to talk. We don't have a lot of time this morning. I look forward to your questions. In my opening remarks, I'm going to stick to this one. When are we economically developed? When are we big enough? When do we finally say to ourselves as a community, through our schools, through our downtown, through who we are historically, when are we big enough? And I look at phase 2. And I look at what we've been proposed thus far through the good work of our city and our council. But yet, once again, it seems to be steered by an outside voice, which is a developer. And I'm not quite sure if the anchor of our phase 2 in our downtown is a 40,000 square foot building with the imprint that goes around that impervious surface, and then the subsequent, whatever, 175 some homes and townhomes down there. I really do think that we have an opportunity to look at downtown and the extension of our historic district. Look what we have on the east side of the Green. Those wonderfully sized homes and permanent streets, coupled with additional park space, maybe once and for all, a legitimate community and senior citizen center that serves the community's needs. An outdoor amphitheater that ties in a streetscape that if it needs, and if we need more retail in this town, we do so at the right scale of what we actually need. Because I do believe that we have an opportunity to be an example and not to continue to, in some cases, in some conversations that I've had with concerned citizens about homogenizing ourselves, we've done a very good job. I think it's very important that we look at what we have in the future for phase 2. This is what I'm looking at right now. We can go on and talk about other parts of our community and projects that we need to finish that we've started. But let's start with what we're looking at as a community, because right now phase 2 seems to be the most important. So my hope is that you'll join me. I've got one more event. I've encouraged the community to come and join me on the last Tuesday of the 28th of next month, down at the church on the Green. I want more folks at home that may be watching who couldn't attend to come and be part of a Q&A. Because if Todd and I or whomever is going to serve this community, we need to know what's going on out there. And I think it's important for us to look at once and for all, creating an opportunity for when we as a council, whomever it is in our community's future, looks at your taxpayer money being spent, I'd like to see that the voices of the taxpayers are represented right there at that table when decisions are being made. That's the difference that we can make in this community in regards to the example that we set. Because if it's our money that runs this show, our town, our community, our Hudson, then we need to know and we need to have a voice in how it's being spent. So I look forward to continuing our conversation this morning, and thanks for your opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yannick. The next candidate is Todd Zidak. Todd moved to Hudson with his family when he was 2 years old. He attended Hudson Public Schools, beginning with Safety Town through his senior year of high school. He earned 7 letters in track and cross country and attended the University of Massachusetts and Amherst. Todd lived in Detroit, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. prior to returning to Hudson 15 years ago to raise his children. He works in the IT space as a project and operations manager and began a COVID-related charity, Hudson OH Helps, dedicated to the idea of fostering and connecting neighbor to neighbor. He has coached his children's baseball and soccer teams. He is a ski instructor and also is a soccer referee. Please join me in giving a Rotary welcome to Todd Zidak.
Hello. Well, this thing really works. Thank you all for inviting Greg and I to share our views for the future of our community with you. We appreciate it. I'm a longtime resident of Hudson who cares deeply about our town. I have no political ambitions, aspirations, or goals except to preserve what needs to be preserved and to grow and change that which needs to grow and change in our town. I believe that I am a reasonable, rational, civil, and thoughtful person. I am creative and I am a doer. I come into the office with a real plan for making things happen on phase 2, on the YDC, on velocity broadband, on community rights versus states' rights, specifically as they relate to zoning. That last topic is a big hit at cocktail parties, I can tell you that. I'm a lifetime and active member of the First Congregational Church. I've coached Little League baseball and soccer. I was a member of Hudson Kiwanis. We've spoken a little bit about Hudson OH Helps, which was really gratifying. About 150 people signed up to help. And for those of you who may not have seen the signs or know what happened there, basically folks who felt they were compromised or couldn't go out would contact me, and I would connect them with someone who actually lived in their neighborhood who was not compromised, and they would go out and run errands for those folks. Of course, this morphed into sort of the penultimate event, which was a lot of members of the community came together, and we actually relocated a mother and her 5 children who had spent a year living in one hotel room at the hotel near the Tiki Lounge into a 3-bedroom home in Akron. The place was repainted, completely furnished. She was given a car. So just a wonderful, touching example of the community coming together to give of their riches to help somebody who really desperately needed it. So that was really gratifying. I have hosted public sessions on political civility. A key factor in the success of those sessions was the establishment of our points of commonality. Identify that which we agree on first. Another technique that we utilized was that before you could speak, you had to repeat what the other person had said. And they had to agree that that's what they said. This is a hugely frustrating experience because you realize that most of the time when you're listening to somebody, you're formulating your comment. And when you're forced to listen so closely, you have to repeat it back to them. By the time it comes time for you to repeat, to say your thing, you don't have anything to say because you've been focused on what they're saying, which is actually the point, of course, of the exercise. So the council proposal last night, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but it was a motion to allow the city manager to enter into negotiations with Fairmont, which is almost jaw-dropping to me in its insensitivity to the feelings of the community. A frequent complaint is that council does not listen. I believe there can be no greater evidence of this than the actions taken yesterday. It is as if the farmer asked the fox to guard the henhouse. As a member of council, I intend to bring reason and civility to the discussions, and I guarantee that everyone's views will be listened to and responded to and dealt with in a rational, thoughtful way. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to your questions.
First question. Does anyone have a question to lead things off? James.
Thank you both for running. What's involved in that? So the essential question, we have people who are looking for development allowed to support business, and others in also all of us in Hudson want to maintain the look and feel of Hudson, not overdeveloped. But the question to both of you is, how do you balance that? Because all the funds that support our police, our fire, our parks, our roads, all those pretty much come from income from businesses that are here. So how do you, so we could have no traffic, obviously, if we have no businesses. But so the question to both of you is, how do you maintain that source of revenue to run the town and balance it with not overdeveloped?
Thank you, Jim. The economics involved in the running of the town seem to be well in hand. And I think that a really nice balance has already been achieved between expenses and income. There's a surplus in the general fund and so on. So for me, what comes back to what should be the driving force for what we do as a community is, what do we value? What are the values of the community? And this can be determined. And it's not a question of whether we want another business to open here or there, or we want this house or that house. The question is, what do we value and what activities will support those values?
This one. How about this? Can you hear me, folks? All right. I guess what I would say to you on this one, in regards to what Todd said, we do have some dinero in the coffer in our community. And it's not as if Hudson is going to wither away and die on the vine. We have done a very good job up to this point in balancing the needs of our community and those that have come from the outside and our developers. It strikes me, one of the earlier comments on Planning Commission that I always heard, how difficult it's been to develop in Hudson. Well, I think up to this point, that sort of has run the contrary. Some of the comments that I shared with the community the other night, and I will right now, is I do believe that let's put the brakes on this thing right now as it deals with downtown. We have waited up to this point to do downtown's phase 2 the right way for our community's needs. Are we surprised by the council's actions last night? We shouldn't be, because that's how we see things going. I think both of us have talked about trying to unify and open up communication with you folks, because it's you folks who are the folks that make this community go on our taxpayer money. We've got a growth management thing in town when it talks to residential. Well, let's look at that and utilize that in regards to the number of homes that we keep putting pressure on, our schools, which keeps, it's all connected. So this conversation just isn't about phase 2, it's about all that we do. We've indicated those places that are unused, YDC, the property behind Joanne Fabrics, District 8 out Hudson Drive, all places that we have set up for business. That's what we did on the land code years ago, but we've gone into the more pristine areas, like out by 303 where our wellhead is. So if that's where we are, let's finish the business at hand. But our business at hand for downtown is for you folks to be involved. And let's put the brakes on phase 2 until we do it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from anyone in the room? Do we have any questions? Oh, Mimi.
So I'm curious to hear what you each think about how Hudson should make a transition to dependence primarily on fossil fuel produced electricity to renewables.
Sure. First and foremost, I am an environmentalist. My concern for our environment here in Hudson is quite evident as my time in front of our community. I think it is naive, what was the word? Naivete, if you would, for us to philosophically think that we can rely on fossil fuels for the rest of our community's energy needs. We know the source of where that is, and we know up to this point where we've been getting our electricity. We've heard the concerns about that relationship right now with our power. And I think we need to look at the technology that is available and out there. We can't turn our backs on our future. This isn't about me. It's not about you. This is about, if this is about Hudson, it's about our kids' future. Because by the time that hits, we're going to be done with coal and oil. We're going to be worried about where our water's coming from. So back to thinking outside of our box, let's start thinking outside of our box on this one for sure, and look into all possibilities to supply energy to our community. Because once we start then it starts for everybody else, because we all have to get on board. This isn't a Hudson issue. This is a statewide, this is a global issue. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I am a firm believer in wind power and solar power. How those solutions could get manifested in our town, it's something I'm not necessarily clear about. I don't know. We live in Northeast Ohio. Welcome to the land of no sunshine. What impact does that have on electrical solar generation? Certainly it doesn't help it, but there's nothing wrong with having some infrastructure in place to support that. Where would a wind farm go in town? Again, I don't know the meteorological specifics on that, but I absolutely think that a portion of our funds should go towards research in those areas, and we should aggressively pursue making those things manifest for sure.
Thank you, Father Joe.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I appreciate it. I want to circle back around to the phase 2 bit. And I know some people who were involved in the development of phase 1 who talked the real struggle that they had to even get that moving and happening. And I just think that we would be poor as a community if we didn't have that. I never go out to eat, but I'm not eating in Hudson. So if we didn't have phase 1, I think as a community we'd be poor. How do you balance this? And I understand that the pump and the brakes that against disenfranchisement, not wanting to change because we don't want to change, not wanting to develop because we just don't want more development.
Thank you. Phase 1, I think, has turned out to be pretty positive. It's pretty okay. There are certainly empty stores. There's certainly a rotating, it's retail. Stores are going to come in and go out. The urban designers and planners that I've shown our community to have wondered, why is there a parking lot between Main Street and this other development? Why did we not take out a building right in the middle of Main Street and create a lovely walkway path that would encourage the traffic flow via foot? When you go to cities that are, especially European cities, what really creates the energy is that it's all foot traffic. It's people walking around and milling around. There's no bigger fan of the Murdots than myself. He's a resident of the city for a long time, and he has demonstrated his philanthropy by paying for the high school stadium and not putting his name on it. He loves this town, and he was a key factor in the development of that area. We have a brick street there that's lovely and great and completely economically makes no sense. He did that because he loves the town. I would posit that Fairmont is interested in developing phase 2 as quickly as possible, primarily to protect, in their view, protect their investment in phase 1, and because they believe they can turn a profit. And God bless them. Good on them. They should turn a profit. That would be wonderful. But my community needs to not be driven by their desire to make money. That needs to be driven by the desires of the community to do what we, as the members of the community, feel is best for their community. I want to go on and on, but I'll respect the timer.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions from the room? Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I lost track of the rotation. Sorry.
I would just reiterate, I think Todd and I are definitely on the same page with this one. I would point again to our opportunity right now to get a hold of this. We have some pretty amazingly talented people in our town professionally that have always been resources for us as a community. And I think that we need to tap into those. I think we need and have this opportunity right now, because the breakneck speed at which we're being driven, as we all understand, is the profit line of an outside entity. I've pointed to different locations in town. I'll point one out is another outside entity that brought some homes into town. And I say this with an apology, but I say this at the good work that we did at that time in our community in regards to District 6 in the Boston Mills corridor and Route 303 corridor, which is now the Weldon Case Industrial Park. That's our well. We years ago spent upwards of $10,000 for an environmental integrity study for this community. And that was an area that was called out as our most environmentally sensitive area. And so when we put our new land code together that included everything, including that area, it was within mind that when we did the things that we did out there, we did so with the environmental concerns. And we took all those steps away on our land code. And that took place over the last 10 plus years. So an opportunity for a developer to come in under the banner of what we used to call the Industrial Guidelines Committee, where Planning Commission and developers and development offices sat down before they even came in, I don't believe even exists anymore in regards to the process that's involved. So back to the process that's involved for this one, phase 2, which is pretty important. We don't need to pump the brakes. We need to squarely pull the emergency brake on this one. This is our town. And again, I'm not surprised by council's actions last night because we've been driven by outside since then. So we are on the same page, I think, on this one.
Okay, question coming in from Zoom. Hudson's law on campaign finance, adopted in 2008 and reaffirmed August 2021, is designed to prevent corruption and promote ethics and integrity in government. It prohibits accepting campaign contributions in excess of $100 per person or group. Do you intend to follow this law?
I think I'm up first. I am running an in-kind campaign. I've spent $224 on my campaign, and that's all I'm going to spend out of my pocket, which purchased me 10 Greg Yannick signs. There's only 8 up. 2 folks decided not to put them up. So that's what I will be reporting throughout this campaign. I'm taking no contributions. All my family's like, what? I'm like, nah, because I'm not a politician. I'm a volunteer that came to this city and did what I decided to do for this city. And I came into this thing thinking, well, I'm a citizen and I'm going to talk like one because if that's what I am, that's how I'm going to talk. So I don't need money to back up what I'm saying. I got my own $223. It's the little sign shop right down there on Ravenna. So I'm thanking those guys for making those signs for me, but I will follow all those laws and put all my reports in and whatnot, but I will not exceed $222, I think it was. All right. Thank you.
I'm glad this came up. I did want to apologize in general to the community for all the signs. Sorry, it's kind of terrible. So sorry about that. For those who would like to research, there's a very, very interesting history on how this law, as it were, came into being. I intend to follow it much like Greg. I have not gone on any kind of crazy fundraising campaign. My efforts are basically self-funded. My expenditures are going to be well under $2,000. I've purchased some T-shirts. Greg's offered to wear one, which is awesome. So certainly the idea of keeping money out of the campaign from outside sources is reasonable. I don't know about the $100 as a limit. Personally, I think it's awfully low. And again, I think if you want an interesting lesson in political maneuvering, do some research on how this law came to be, who sponsored it, why they sponsored it. Because when you think about it, who gets to run really great campaigns, right? Those who can write a big check for themselves. So it doesn't limit how much you can put in. It limits how much other people can give you, making it more difficult for you to raise money that you feel would be required to run an effective campaign. So just probably worth a thought.
Mr. Yannick, can you speak about the views on the campaign tactics such as that took place in at the Hudson School Board meeting? Can you speak about your views on the campaign tactics such as the Hudson. Yep. That would no, it's just that would be every
People can, yeah, sure. People can ask for one candidate, but we're giving the.
good question about.
Great. The real world, it's 2021. I personally stood on our corner at 303 and 91 last year with Hudson High School students and students from Western Reserve Academy as the country looked at what was taking place under the banner of Black Lives Matter. I've watched our community specifically in the last couple of months be on the national news. I understand the concerns that took place at the school board meeting. I'm 58 years old and I'm back on the college campus at Kent State University. And I'm sitting in a class with 20-year-olds, 21, 22. Their conversations about real world are night and day compared to the real world conversations I was having at 21 and 22 when that was 1981 and 80. The conversations about the LGBTQ community on a college campus in 1981 compared to what they are in 2021 are night and day. And so our children today, unlike Todd and I when we were growing up, we didn't have a cell phone. When it was time to go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, you either hung the phone up or you stayed up all night and you watched Big Chuck and Hula Hair. But that's not the world that these kids live in and our children live in. And this is not an easy one. I wouldn't even understand what it would be to be a parent, but I think I could have this conversation. And we need to have this conversation as a community, not just on what took place at the school board, but what's happening not only in our community, but those in we're collectively in this one. The suicide rate amongst children today who are bullied online is unbelievable. Let's not put our heads in the sand about that in the world in which these children live in. Our Hudson children live in this one. And it's great that we are involved. I just believe that the opportunity to talk is now. We have to collectively talk about this as a community. We all have to bring this one together for sure.
I think the mayor's comments were completely out of line and absolutely horrendous and have no, I think they're sort of indefensible. And I have personal views on the veracity of the complaint. However, I think that the most salient point has to do with this sense of, and I use air quotes here if I had them, communication. The school board and city council have almost by law, by rule, by custom, an opportunity for any resident of the community, and according to what happened at the school board, perhaps people who aren't residents of the community, to stand up and for 3 minutes speak their piece. And somehow that becomes an excuse for communication. That's not communicating. I feel great after I've had my 3 minutes, but about 10 minutes later, I feel kind of let down because I didn't have any dialogue. I don't know if I was understood or heard. And whether you're a member of the far right or the far left, the frequent complaint is, I wasn't heard. No one's listening to me, so I'm going to be louder. We have to create a way and a means for the middle to reemerge. And the way we do that is we create environments where actual dialogue happens. People of both sides are recruited to be part of panels, of commissions. It's great to surround yourself with people who sing your own song, but it's not effective leadership. You have to invite in those with whom you disagree.
Thank you. And one last question from Zoom.
Questions for both candidates. Can you both speak to the use of the Hudson files in communicating information to the general public?
certainly Hudson Files was created in response to the absolute feeling that they were not, that people were not being heard, and that there were shenanigans going on behind the scenes. And the only way to understand what is going on behind the scenes was to leverage the sunshine laws that are passed in the state of Ohio, which allow for the public request for information generated in governmental offices. And the Hudson Files did, I believe, their best to post the full content of the responses to those inquiries. And there was maybe a sort of an introductory paragraph that was somewhat slanted. I mean, they certainly weren't looking for material that would say, wow, we should celebrate the actions of the city government. The city government puts out their own material about how great they're doing. And so what was exposed, as it were some instances of bad behavior, if you will, or not adhering to the letter of the law, or relationships that weren't completely as transparent as they might have been. So I think it was perfectly fine. And I'm sorry that so many members of the community felt that was their only recourse. But that's where that came from, and that's my view on that.
I believe what I would add with what Todd has said in this is that this comes back to our community's involvement in the workings of our government. Each month, council meets every first and third month of day of the month. They have scheduled workshops. Every one of our city appointed boards has scheduled meetings and workshops. It would be nice to see our council's chambers filled to the brim when council meetings happen, aside from the wonderful opportunity for the high school students to be there to fulfill a history requirement. That's what I'm talking about. That's what he's talking about. Our voices being involved. Public domain and public information has been there since in perpetuity. You just got to go and get it. And disseminating how we do what we do is what is our responsibility as citizens and as elected officials. As he and I've talked about, we're just citizens walking into this one. So when I talked earlier to you on my opening comments about creating this forum that opens up you as taxpayers sitting at the table with those that spend our taxpayer money, that's squarely my deal coming in if I have that opportunity. If that means rewriting our charter to create that citizens board that oversees how we do what we do so that we have the voices as citizens, then let's do it. And if finding things that are going on in our government is uncomfortable, well, then let's change that if things are going on that citizens don't like. But we've got to all get to the table at some point and begin these conversations right now. Can we do that? Can we create a citizens board? I think that goes back to what I'm trying to say is let's be an example. Let's create this opportunity. Phase 1, phase 2, YDC, our schools, the way we care for our infrastructure. We're all in these things together. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this morning.
We are so we are still on. So we're still on for our Pints for Polio, but our location may need to shift, and I'm working on that. So be prepared. We're still going to do the Pints for Polio coming up later in the month, but it will be the location will be announced next week. All right, we have our drawing. We have a whopping $9 payout. And James, are you in on this? You are not. All right, then I will allow you to pick the ticket. Who's going to reimburse you? All $4.50? Okay, the winning ticket is 716-668. Oh, Richard, come on down. Put it back, but you got to come pick a marble. Yeah, the jackpot is $241. So you can verify that the black marble is in there?
Black marble is in.
All right. Go for it, Richard. Oh, no black marble. Jackpot stays and continues to build for next week. All right. Based upon the lapse from my quote, this one's not going to do as well. What kind of nut has no shell? Donut.